Hello, everyone. We're starting the Dance Studies Colloquium. It's 2:30 in Philadelphia, London, and Ohio is maybe a little earlier, I'm not sure. This is Mark Franco, and I'm coming to you from Temple University, and we are very happy to present the last installment this fall of the Dance Studies Colloquium. It will, with Harmony Bench and Kate Ellswood, whom I'll introduce in a moment. The colloquium will continue virtually in the winter, spring with a full program. We will be advertising the program itself in early January, so look out for that. And so we will remain fully virtual through the rest of this academic year. Okay. It's my pleasure today to introduce our team of speakers working on this project together, Kate Ellswood and Harmony Bench. Kate Ellswood is a scholar artist whose research on performing bodies combines dance history, performance theory, cultural studies, medical humanities, experimental practice, and technology. She's the author of Watching Weimar Dance, 2014, which was won the Oscar G. Brockett Book Prize for Dance Research and honorable mention for the Callaway Prize, and of Theater and Dance, 2018. Her current research includes a monograph on the intersections of breath, performance, and measurement from the Victorian era to the present, as well as the digital humanities project we will hear about today, Dunham's Data, Katherine Dunham and Digital Methods for Dance Historical Inquiry. In collaboration with Harmony Bench, this project is funded by a 3-year grant from the UK Arts and Humanities Research Council. And I want to add that Dunham's Data is the winner of the 2021 ATHE ASTR Award for Excellence in Digital Theater and Performance Scholarship. So bravo for that. Kate received her PhD from the University of Cambridge and is now Reader in Theatre and Performance at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, University of London, and co-editor of the New World Choreographies book series. Harmony Bench is Associate Professor in the Department of Dance at The Ohio State University, where she is also affiliated with Women's, Gender, and Sexuality Studies, Theater, Folklore, and Translational Data Analytics. Her research addresses practices, performance, and circulations of dance in the contexts of digital and screen media. She is the author of Perpetual Motion, Dance, Digital Cultures, and the Common with University of Minnesota Press, 2020, and she is at work on a new book on affect and kinesthesia in screen dance spectatorship. For several years, Harmony has collaborated with Kate on bringing the digital humanities and dance history into greater dialogue, most recently with the Dunham's Data project. From 2014 to 2019, she was co-editor of the International Journal of Screen Dance, with Simon Ellis, and is excited to be guest editing the special issue on COVID-19. So let me just, with that, say that please use the Q&A to enter any questions and comments that will be taken up toward the end of the talk, rather than the chat if possible. And welcome to both Harmony and Kate.
Thanks so much, Mark. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
We'll just get our screen share up. Almost there. Awesome. So in the 14 years from 1947 to 1960, choreographer Katherine Dunham spent over 5,000 days in hundreds of cities on 6 continents. During that time, almost 200 dancers, drummers, and singers traveled with her, performing almost 200 repertory pieces. We know this because we've been working through Dunham's extensive archives for the past several years, manually curating data sets that trace these people, places, and pieces in the context of a project that asks, what are the questions and problems that make the analysis and visualization of data meaningful for dance historical inquiry. Taking shape as a critical digital humanities practice, our work involves structuring and building data sets from undigitized primary source materials, which find meaning and expression in tandem with exploratory data visualizations and co-authored print scholarship. In this project, we're joined by postdoctoral researchers, data scientist Antonio Jimenez Mavillard, and dance scholar Tia Monique Uzor, and previously Takia Nur Amin. We acknowledge their work on pretty much every slide, and yet, of course, that misses so much about the intangible work of scholarly collaboration.
Today, we're going to start with some notes on bodies and data that lend themselves to our developing methodology of visceral data analysis and situate this research within a larger landscape of performance history, creative technological practice, and digital humanities. We'll explain why Dunham is such an exemplary case study, both as a rigorous self-archivist and also as a figure who poses problems for certain of the organizing fictions of dance history, such as the tour, the company, and the work. Then we'll turn to the three core areas of our ongoing research in which the demands of digital methodologies offer new ways into the archives. We affectionately refer to the underlying data sets for these three sections as places, people, and pieces, hence the subtitle of this talk. We begin with building an itinerary of where Dunham was every single day for 14 years, and the way this granular approach opened up an understanding of what we've come to call Dunham's global method, which is to say how Dunham's transnational circulation was entangled with her pursuit of solvency. Then we trace the comings and goings of her dancers, drummers, and singers over that time, and sketch possible lines of transmission for the embodied knowledge contained within the Dunham Company as a porous and dynamic movement community as they traveled. Finally, we'll look at how those generations of performers were further connected through Dunham's repertory itself as it was repurposed and repackaged over the years, and the implications of data-driven approaches in terms of alternative ways of understanding the choreographic work and its canonical importance.
Dance history has established precedents for curating data as part of its analytic practices, even without recourse to digital methods, from timelines to appendices of works. However, even though digital methods have become increasingly commonplace in most humanities fields, when we began to collaborate in 2013, dance historians had yet to propose how such tools were useful or to adapt them to dance's specific questions, concerns, and traces. Similarly, approaches from the digital humanities and other data-driven analytic frames were not designed with dance in mind. So when we refer to digital methods for historical inquiry, we're not talking about platforms for collection, dissemination, or display, such as websites or multimedia storytelling. Rather, we mean how data-informed graphical, statistical, and computational approaches can help us to differently ask questions that matter to dance scholarship. And just to be clear here, we don't think digital tools have all the answers, but they can help us look at problems like the transnational spread of movement cultures, which has been an imperative in the field since the 1990s. And here we're thinking about folks from Savigliano to Srinivasan. At the same time as we use digital approaches to better understand the circulation and transmission of movement, we also want to show how dance-based approaches to embodiment contribute to the digital humanities, for which bodies and bodily experience pose unique challenges.
When scholars speak of bodies in a data context, it's often to acknowledge the risks of dematerialization and to critically examine how subjects and their material circumstances are represented. And here we're thinking particularly of Lauren Klein and Catherine D'Ignazio and their call in data feminism to bring back the bodies. Now, this is especially important when seeking to represent Black embodiment and experiences, while resisting what Jessica Marie Johnson calls, quote, the devastating thingification of Black women, children, and men, close quote, that is entangled with histories of quantification from the slave trade onwards. And there's really a lot of terrific thinking and work coming out of feminist and anti-racist discourses in the digital humanities, but this is somewhere we think dance also can contribute something unique. So Dunham's data attends to the bodies in the data and the ways that digital methods can evidence and elaborate bodily experience. We've come to describe our emergent methodology as visceral data analysis. And this follows both Rebecca Schneider's invocation of visceral cultural analysis as a mode of critique and Kelly Dobson's articulation of data visceralization, to describe visualization strategies that resist the priority of vision in favor of the, quote, palpable and experiential and real, close quote. We propose visceral data analysis as a data-driven approach tailored to the medium of dance and informed by critical dance studies. And we argue that it can transform how digital tools and technologies are put to use in the study of embodied knowledge and experience for dance history and interdisciplinary digital scholarship.
It feels somehow suited to undertake this exploratory work in relation to Katherine Dunham, who was herself deeply interdisciplinary in the critical and creative research practices that fed her artistic work, pedagogy, activism, and scholarship. We began this project wanting to work on a choreographer with a rich transnational history who would allow us to explore digital research methods with depth and rigor, in particular with regard to our big ongoing question of how movement moves. We traveled to several archives, and as soon as we visited Dunham's archive at Southern Illinois University at Carbondale, we knew she was the right person for this project. First, she was an extraordinary self-archivist. She saved so much material that it's actually possible to do this kind of work, like figuring out where she was nearly every single day for 14 years. Second, she worked around the world for decades, and her work itself was also invested in representing the many peoples and places she encountered. Third, we recognize that Dunham would force us to rethink many of the received paradigms in dance history about the circumstances under which choreographers created and toured their work. Dunham's expansive and wide-ranging career presents a challenge in the ways she worked across disciplinary, geographic, and temporal boundaries. These interconnections matter because, as Veve Clark, Khalifa Ousmari, Joanna D. Das, Stephanie Batiste, and so many others have shown, Dunham's aesthetic practices were deeply entangled with her relationship to diaspora.
In a 1994 essay, Clark argued for shifting scales in order to study Dunham in relation to the entanglement of multiple elements simultaneously, including connecting Dunham's own travels to the touring of her productions and her own embodied learning to the transmission of repertory among company members. And this is something we've been discussing with Khalifa Ousmari in using data-driven approaches as a complementary practice in responding to Clark's call to maintain the complexity of Dunham's many facets at different scales, from quotidian minutiae that make up each data point to the systemic connections they cumulatively reveal. And we consider how history is iterated across time, space, and bodies.
Our data sets draw almost entirely from undigitized archival materials that Dunham herself saved and donated. We start by working in special collections and other public archives to manually sort through documents and compile relevant information into data sets, so effectively spreadsheets. Each data point has a story and sometimes multiple conflicting stories, and we evaluate how to best represent such discrepancies as part of the story as well. So right now we're scrolling through one of the core data sets that we've been manually curating for Dunham's data, which is an itinerary of where Dunham was every single day from 1947 to 1960, the years of her most substantial international touring. Although Dunham had previously traveled widely on her own, including for her anthropological research in the 1930s, 1947 marks the moment when her company began touring internationally, starting with Mexico and then Europe in 1948. The early 1950s represent an expansion of Dunham's geographical coverage to include countries throughout South America, as well as a few in North Africa. Touring throughout Oceania and East Asia followed in the mid to late 1950s, and after a period of convalescence in Japan with a serious injury, Dunham resumed international touring in 1959, before the company again disbanded while in Europe in 1960.
We've accounted for 97% of the days over these 14 years, during which time Dunham traveled to approximately 190 unique cities, over 433 trips on every continent but Antarctica. We see this as a kind of backbone data set. It's not very sexy from a dance perspective, certainly not as compared to some of the other material that we're going to show you today, but you'll see later on how many other data sets and visualizations rely on this basic question of where Dunham was and when. Despite Dunham's extensive archiving, any individual item in her collection is not necessarily reliable in itself, not only because of the fallibility of archival materials, but also because of the regular last-minute changes to her touring itinerary. So in compiling this itinerary, we routinely cross-reference and reconcile information, including from performance contracts, receipt books, personal logs, programs, newspaper clippings, and personal and professional correspondence, and so on. To these, we also add supplemental data sources, including immigration records, local newspapers, and historical transit maps and schedules. Key dates in Dunham's historical record have already been corrected by scholars through the close analysis of archival materials, including Didas, who redates Southland and also argues that Dunham spent far less time in the Caribbean on her anthropological travels than previously assumed. However, the systematic and comprehensive nature of datasets offers a means to draw attention to and across moments and events that have not been thoroughly documented, but may prove to be important. For example, scholars have approached us regarding Dunham's itinerary, for which we've been able to corroborate, add to, and correct dates of travel. These are small details, but they potentially have big knock-on effects in understanding the transnational flows of Dunham's company.
So this data set shows what we know and how we think we know it. So for example, if we go to January 30th, 1950, here we know from Dunham's letters that she arrived in Cairo from Paris in the first half of this particular week. We then found airline route maps from the winter of 1950, which showed that particular route was only flown by TWA on Tuesdays or Thursdays. We then consulted historical calendars to figure out that Dunham was performing in Paris through Monday the 29th, traveled between cities on Tuesday the 30th, and then stayed in Cairo for a short time before traveling onward to Italy in early February. So not all data points take this much work to validate, but quite a lot of them do. We often have to reconcile conflicting information from the archives, and we keep track of that decision-making process in the notes column where we summarize the logic of each point. And in the next column, we also keep track of the archival and other sources we consulted so that future scholars can follow our trail.
Every day for 14 years is over 5,000 days. And no one can really think about all that data at once. So we also experiment with different types of computational analyses and visualizations as a way to better understand what we're seeing at different scales. Here's an interactive timeline we've been building to think about duration and where Dunham's stays accumulate. It's worth mentioning that this itinerary follows all of Dunham's travel, regardless of whether or not she was performing. But we do also keep track of the venues where she performs, and she's in a lot of different types of places. So this timeline can be organized chronologically, which it is now, or by most visited countries. And then if you click on a country, say Italy, then a pop-up window will show you every city she visited within that country. In these 14 years, she traveled through 26 cities in Italy, many more than one time. And it's also an interface for the data set that we showed you previously.
We also mapped this itinerary as a spatialized timeline on a 3D globe. So here, time is represented as elevation from 1947 in yellow at the base map to 1960 up in red. The granularity of day-by-day accumulation has become a core logic of the project, how more than 5,000 individual days are both particular in themselves and also come together to form a spatial rendering of Dunham's personal geography and travel. So as you see, this also has an interactive interface. And we're going to be showing screen grabs throughout this talk, but we're happy to live demo in the Q&A. And we're also going to be releasing a portfolio of beta visualizations online shortly.
So how can we understand dance history through such patterns of movement through the world? What can touring tell us about dance, such as the conditions in which dancers performed or the terms under which they traveled? In a recent essay, we show how the process of building this data set illuminated the ways in which Dunham's transnational circulation was entangled with her pursuit of solvency in the face of many obstacles, which then propelled Dunham, her performers, and her work into the world in the mid-20th century. The geographic expanse of Dunham's touring and the pace of her schedule demonstrates a kind of global audience supporting her work, but it's also a little bit more complicated than that. In a 1950 letter, Dunham is both proud and frustrated as she describes her company as, quote, the only non-subsidized professional group that has remained self-supporting over these years. And she goes on to point out that, quote, we are loved and respected all over the world and work more weeks out of the year than any other dance group in existence, close quote. With no substantial private or public patron, Dunham performed where she could count on an audience, and her pathways can help us to understand how she built a global network of support. Looking closely at Dunham's international itinerary complicates a typical narrative of success. Runs were extended or they were reduced in relation to audience demand, and long-planned tours were abandoned at the last minute to be replaced by a string of short engagements nearby. In pursuing this research, we've come to recognize that accounting for the transnational legacy of what we call Dunham's global method also brings forward experiences of structural racism and financial precarity. And we're thinking about this with Catherine McKittrick about the politics of attending to the geographies of Black women's lived experiences.
The trend we observe across Dunham's many trips is their short duration. Most lasted only between 1 day and 2 weeks. So in other words, we're talking about almost constant travel. We also noticed that she generally stayed longer, sometimes up to 3 months, in cities with populations over 1 million, but such events are scattered. For the most part, Dunham's geographic reach expands as she has to keep moving from city to city. This kind of travel suggests a particular kind of wear and tear that's physical, and this visualization is something we built a bit more experimentally to consider what it means to represent the compounding impact of such a brutal travel itinerary on Dunham herself. And just as a point of comparison here, the Jose Limon Dance Company had a South American tour in 1954 that was sponsored by the US State Department, during which time they spent only 1 week in each of the 4 large cities along the East Coast. By contrast, in her own South American tour in 1950, Dunham spent 10 months performing in 14 cities across the continent.
In this way, we also rebalance the geography of Dunham's scholarship. Most of the familiar stories about Dunham are located in Chicago, Paris, New York, Port-au-Prince, and East St. Louis. However, looking day by day, we can see that she spends a lot of time in Los Angeles, which is less recognized in accounts of Dunham, but expands the loci of her practice. For example, if we look at her travel from 1950 to 53, which is mapped out here, she spent a lot of time in the western part of North America, not only Los Angeles, but also Las Vegas and Reno. But the majority of these venues were nightclubs. Across the 14 years we've collected so far, roughly a quarter of Dunham's live performances took place outside of conventional concert venues in nightclubs, casinos, and dinner cabarets around the world. Looking to Dunham's patterns of travel, therefore not only identifies different audiences, but also different artistic contexts for her work. And this is an invitation that we hope future dance scholars will take up.
Just as the itinerary forced us to change our conception of easily narratable units, such as what a tour was, the personnel dataset also prompted us to rethink what a dance company was. Dunham's relentless schedule did not observe any performance seasons, and she routinely disbanded part of her company to perform in nightclubs with a small cast, then reconvene the whole group in the next city or country. Looking to the dynamic movement community of Dunham's performers allows us to trace a more realistic picture of artistic work in mid-century US American theater dance, and the ways that this, in turn, is reflected in the development and transmission of an aesthetic. As we've already argued with respect to itinerary, with no consistent source of public or private funding, and often without the support of a dependable impresario, Dunham constantly maneuvered to string together short-term engagements, touring for years on end rather than cyclically, like other contemporaneous dance companies of equal status. Dunham picked up international performers as she traveled around the world, which then shaped the group's embodied knowledge of culturally specific rhythms and gestures. The company was thus a porous entity that worked across multiple contexts, tethered together by the system of training that Dunham developed and disseminated, as well as by the affective continuity through which performers understood their relationship to the group and to diaspora more broadly. And we've been thinking how this sits within a larger conversation of the ways in which dancers have historically navigated multiple genres within their own bodies under multiple configurations of employment.
In place of more conventional measures such as seasons or tours, we built the performer check-in dataset to track the flow of nearly 200 dancers, drummers, and singers coming and going from various international locations at a granular scale. Such a data perspective shows how participation in Dunham's company changed over time, allowing us to speculate who was in the studio together and how this would have facilitated a process of body-to-body transmission. And the image that we're looking at right now is a sample of where we get our personnel data. It's an archival document in which performers have signed to show that they were paid. These tick marks visually represent the presence of individual performers in our personnel dataset. We treat archival documents as either comprehensive or non-comprehensive check-ins. So for a payroll log, like we just saw, only those who are listed were present and everyone else will get checked out. By contrast, a note saying that Tommy Gomez missed his entrance is evidence that he was there, but it doesn't offer any information about the others. Because we average 3 check-ins per month, we document our level of confidence in dating each one from that specific day to within a week to sometime that month, etc. We also keep track of select additional information such as geographical affinities and alternate names and spellings. So for example, dancer Oletta Williams is also known as Boots Wade, but she can't be identified just by Williams alone because her sister Jeanette Williams also toured with Dunham.
Concurrently developed, our multiple data sets support one another. So as an example, if we find a program in Italian that doesn't list a theater or a year, we first look to the performer check-in data set to narrow the time span during which listed performers were employed by Dunham. We then return to our everyday itinerary data set to determine when we've identified that the company was performing in Italy within those date parameters. And we may further refine that dating using newspaper reviews that reference specific pieces of repertory. Newly dated programs, in turn, provide further information back to these data sets, such as additional performers or repertory. While select performers appear consistently throughout the duration of our 14-year data set, many others appear for only short periods, sometimes a single check-in as a local guest appearance. For nearly 2/3 of performers, the span of time from their first to last check-in was less than a year. Yet the check-ins for almost 1/5 of Dunham's people span more than 4 years.
We visualize the personnel data set and its connections between company members over time as a chronological flow diagram that tracks 189 individual performers through Dunham's employment between 1947 to 1960. We call attention to continuity and gradual change in who shared time and space by shading each performer by the first time they appear in our data. The coloring starts from dark blue for the earliest performers and transitions to light blue for those who joined later on. And you can click on an individual and trace their trajectory. So right now we're clicking on Ural Wilson, and you can see that he first appears in July of 1950 and remains with Dunham for over a decade. You can also click on a particular moment in time to see the full trajectories of every artist who shares that particular check-in. This is July of 1955 in Mexico City, and you can see how in that moment there are performers who were present as far back as 1947, where our data set currently begins, and those who still remained in 1960.
Data like this engages with ongoing conversations in dance studies about the relational nature of dance technique and practice for the formation, transmission, and staging of community, including by Judith Hamera, Jasmine Johnson, Tommy DeFrance, and Margit Edwards. We see this diagram as a visual argument that traces potential lines of transmission. So some of the ways that artists could have encountered knowledge that preceded them and passed on knowledge that carried forward from that moment onward. And this diagram is one of the places where we've begun to experiment with something that feels particularly important to us for future work, which is developing what we're coming to think of as a choreographic syntax for visualizations that arise from historical dance data. At the same time, because we're aware how compelling visual materials are, this is also an example where we center our own archival interpretations by marking comprehensive and non-comprehensive check-ins differently.
To better understand this data, we ran what is called a community detection algorithm, which is a computational method used to discover groupings within complex networks based on the density of their connections. In our case, the performers who shared the most check-ins. 4 groups emerged from this analysis, with each group assigned a distinct color, and the coloring of each performer node reflects their degree of belonging to each group. Time runs counterclockwise here from 1947 at the lower right to 1960 at the lower left. And in general, the groups roughly cohere around chronology, but certain individuals stand out in a manner that calls attention to specific people central to maintaining the company's embodied knowledge and memory. It's perhaps not surprising to see familiar names such as Banoy Akins, Ricardo Avalos, Lucille Ellis, Lenwood Morris, and Earl Wilson at the center of the network. However, there are other individuals who straddle multiple groups and thus form crucial cross-generational links. We also built this interactive chord diagram as a way into the particular connections between individuals in a simplified form. So this is a ever popular example, Eartha Kitt and Earl Wilson again. From these perspectives, it is not only Dunham herself who holds the community together, although her force of will was critical to the company's ability to continue, but rather the performers' many nested and entangled relationships that facilitated embodied exchanges, both individually and collectively.
At the same time, being part of multiple communities or generations of Dunham's company is only one of many ways to think about continuity. So for example, individuals who might be considered central to preserving the Dunham's legacy, but who spent less time in the company are not as visible from this perspective. And post-company generations are absent altogether. From the perspective of today's Institute for Dunham Technique certification, almost all of the original company members are first generation, or rather all of the original company members are first generation, and certified artists are counted in stages from there. And it would be amazing to trace the full ripple effects, both formal and informal. So this is why we talk, even for this historical period, about potential lines of transmission for embodied knowledge. Tracing which performers shared the stage together across different periods of time highlights just some of the many possibilities of exchange that might have been enacted.
In addition to transmitting knowledge within the movement community, dancers, drummers, and singers also brought rhythms and gestures with them into the group. Here we connected our check-in data set with additional information we had gathered about the performers, specifically their nationalities. What is conspicuous is that as Dunham's international circulation increased, so too did the multinational balance of her company. Most of the company held US passports in 1947 when she first started to tour internationally, but you can see how that changes over time. Such data offers a loose proxy for the connections a performer might hold to parts of the world, including embodied knowledge that they brought into the movement community and which contributed to maintaining and developing the Afro-diasporic imagination of Dunham's choreography.
So here we put this performer data and the check-ins together with Dunham's travel itinerary to evidence how consistently Dunham picked up performers while touring, and thus how the complex dynamics of place unfold and are reconfigured over time in relation to the company's travel. And so here the orange bars represent the time spent in a particular country, and the blue dots indicate where dancers with that passport joined. During our 14-year period, 64 performers joined Dunham's company, carrying 17 different non-US passports that represented 25 countries. Of those, over 2/3 joined during or soon after Dunham had spent time in the country for which they held a passport. So for example, the first dot associated with Argentina is Ricardo Avalos, who joined around the time Dunham was performing in Buenos Aires. We've often heard stories about Dunham traveling around the world and picking up performers as she went, but we didn't understand how frequently it happened until we looked at them all at once.
These connections between performers and place are further interconnected with Dunham's decades of travel and entangled both with her work as an early pioneer of participant observation in anthropology and with the aesthetics of her creative practice. Dunham scholars have always understood how Dunham's diasporic imagination played a part in bringing the contributions of Black dance modernism into focus for dance studies. Following Clark's memory of difference, Osamari argues that the Dunham technique facilitated a means for performers to participate in this process of transmission and transformation. In her words, quote, each body interpreted the choreography while accessing his or her own embodied knowledge emerging from their part of the Black Atlantic. close quote. Looking in this way extends discussions regarding the choreographic representation of diaspora to the ways in which diaspora moved through the bodies of Dunham's dancers, drummers, and singers.
Accounting for every one of Dunham's performers forces us to grapple with shifting geopolitical landscapes, including the ways in which colonial subjects circulated through the cosmopolitan hubs of colonial powers. For example, Lucie Guanel carried a French passport and joined in Paris, but came from Martinique, and Astrid Salazar came from the Dutch Caribbean island of Curacao, carrying a Dutch passport and went on to Rotterdam after she left the company. The accumulation of individuals responds to imperatives to shift diaspora away from specific anchor sites such as Africa or the US, toward a broader approach to the ways in which what Jana Brown calls journeying Black women in the first half of the 20th century participated as critical subjects in her words, the articulation between remote and local realms. And here we're thinking alongside scholars including Marissa Parham and Jessica Marie Johnson, who show how digital methods are particularly suited to engaging with African diasporic practices, both transnationally and transhistorically. Collectively, these visualizations allow us to better understand how Dunham's dancers, drummers, and singers each contributed something to the company when they joined and carried Dunham's influence into the broader world when they left.
In addition, choreographies that stayed in Dunham's repertory long-term functioned as a kind of shared memory that connected performers who may not have shared time and space within the company. One day, we clicked on every performer who had ever performed in Vera Cruzana, which is what we're looking at right now. Although Vera Cruzana is rarely discussed in Dunham scholarship, it was regularly performed from its premiere in 1948 until the end of our data set in 1960. And it also has a cast of 15. To date, we've identified 53 performers who appear in the piece, which is over a quarter of the dancers, drummers, and singers from this period of time. And when we highlight all of them, we can begin to see a chain of body-to-body knowledge, as well as how this piece of repertory itself functions as a kind of memory that holds the community together.
However, whereas Vera Cruzana might itself seem relatively stable, Dunham's repertory challenges what constitutes a work in a fundamental way, since she constantly reimagined and repackaged her choreography in a much more complex way than a conventional list of works alone would suggest. And this is something that happens to us a lot. We start to build a data set and quickly discover that the world is a lot messier than the discrete chunks with which we began. Our repertory data set therefore seeks to understand the shifting relationships among the almost 300 named entities that we've cataloged of Dunham's choreography. And this comes primarily from how they're represented in programs, supplemented by show pattern correspondence, lighting plots, and other archival materials. Attempting to catalog this as data opens up the concept of repertory beyond the individual work, and we've developed a nested hierarchy to track the relationships between choreographic entities.
Okay, so here are two study images to help explain this phenomenon. The program on the left is from Belfast in 1952, and the one on the right is from Copenhagen from 1959. Both include Brazilian suite, which is what we call a container, and it usually contained around 4 to 6 pieces. These two examples of Brazilian suite include some of the same pieces, but also some different pieces. And then one piece that is in the container in 1952 exits to become a standalone piece in the 1959 program. So we can already see a nesting and reconfiguration between just these two programs, but our full repertory dataset entry for Brazilian suite is built from 63 programs, over which we see 20 pieces total coming in and out over time, many of which also appear as standalone pieces or even within other containers.
So here we graph these nested relationships as a network. I'll just let it float for a minute there. So evening length shows are orange, containers are red, pieces are blue, and dances are aqua, which are generally named social dances. And so this is why we say that building a data set from Dunham's programs challenges the idea of a choreographic work. In Dunham's repertory, approximately 40% of what dance scholars would typically categorize as a piece appears as part of 2 or more containers. And we also use the color purple for works that sometimes appear in the context of a container and other times appear as standalone pieces. From this network perspective, most pieces are no more than 3 or 4 steps from one another, and all are connected within 10 degrees. In this period, the show Caribbean Rhapsody is a particularly central bridge between clusters, which makes sense because we've documented 24 entities that are part of it at various times. Among containers, Americana, Brazilian Suite, and so here's Americana, there's Brazilian Suite, and then Motivos contain the most pieces, so 15 to 20 each. And looking in reverse, between 1947 to 1960, 13 pieces belong to 3 to 5 different containers.
All right, so here's an example of how the nested hierarchy works. These are 2 screen grabs where we highlight an entity and 1 degree of connection from it. On the left is plantation dances, which includes the dances in dances Palmer House and Hambone, among many others. It was originally part of Briar Rabbit from 1938, but then plantation dances became the opening number in the ballet Southland in 1950, as well as part of a container called Field Hands and Plantation Dances. Then 2 separate pieces, one called Field Hands, the other called Plantation Dances, were each sometimes a part of the many that loosely made up a container called Americana, which itself was performed throughout the 1950s. And then on the right image, we did the same 1 degree highlight, starting with Americana, so you can see how many other pieces are connected to it as well. This gets us a way to see how movement practices circulated within Dunham's choreography through the remixing of repertory. Plantation dances alone connects repertory from as early as 1938 through the 1950s across many iterations. Looking this way, Dunham's repertory emerges not as a series of discrete works that are repeated, but rather as a complex body of knowledge, an interconnected set of gestures, rhythms, and practices that link performers, including those who may never have performed together at the same time. The recycling of dance across new contexts undermines a stable understanding of what constitutes a work in a manner that acknowledges gestural, rhythmic, and affective coherence, while also allowing for changes including duration, cast size, context, and even content.
The idea of a flexible container is another example of something that's known tacitly from practice, but which can be evidenced and elaborated through data. When we spoke to Sheila Ward as an expert user, she described what we've come to call containers back to us through an experience of restaging Americana and having to choose which pieces to include, such that her Americana would be different from someone else's. Recently, we've started to build punch card diagrams to understand the evolution of Dunham's containers over time, and these are 2 examples representing containers we've already mentioned, so Brazilian Suite and Americana. And our postdoc, Tia Monique Uzor, has been doing further research that connects the evolution of these containers to Dunham's real and imagined travels.
Focusing on repertory in this way complicates Dunham's canon. Proportional representation in dance scholarship would suggest that Dunham's work of greatest historical importance include La Gia, Barrel House, Rita Passage, and especially Southland, even though the latter was performed only a few times. However, what if we accounted instead for key works by other metrics, such as which ones had the most number of performers pass through, indicating a broadly shared and intergenerational reference point? In this alternate canon, Veracruzana and Afrique would feature prominently. Another approach would be to look at which pieces were performed most frequently, or the number of years they stayed in repertory. For example, La Gia appears for 13 years of our La Gia appears for 13 years out of our 1947 to 60 dataset, but so do Nostalgia and Psalm. But Nostalgia is one of the only entities in our data with which today's Dunham technique community is unfamiliar. Likewise, choreographic styles could become visible not in individual pieces, but in distinctive patterns of repeated working and combination, such as which pieces appeared in the most containers. And as the example of Nostalgia shows, archival print materials hold on to history differently than body-to-body transmission or even oral history. As part of a future project, we've been developing an equitable participatory design process with the Institute for Dunham Technique Certification to experiment with what a repertory data set would look like that is built directly from studio knowledge and the oral history that comes with it, bypassing print archives altogether.
In addition to cataloging the nested relationships of each entity, our repertory dataset also includes the various titles and descriptions by which it might be known, the years in which it was performed, whether it appeared in concert halls, nightclubs, or both, documented lengths, and there's often quite a lot of them, and all of the dancers, drummers, and singers who are ever listed as having performed in it. The repertory dataset also captures both Dunham's particular language in describing the times and places of her choreographic work, and the real and imagined geographies that they index. So if we go back to those programs for Brazilian Suite, Dunham described these pieces in terms of various reference to place. So in the 1952 program, Acaraj is framed as a narrative story about a street vendor in Bahia. Choros purports to be a historical play on a 19th century Brazilian quadrille. And Frevo has the most anthropological referent as a study of Carnival in Pernambuco. So these two images are experiments in placing that data on a stacked bar chart and on a map in order to visualize how Dunham extended her connections to place through the imaginative work of choreography and how these choreographic relationships to place change over time. While Dunham's known as a choreographer who mines the US and Caribbean practices, what interests us is the view of the world that's represented by the broader geographical reach of Dunham's oeuvre. The works and repertory thus not only reference locations and cultural practices, but subsequent touring also circulates these rhythms and gestures to further places. And we have a soft spot for this because mapping the relationships between Dunham's choreography and ethnography was one of our initial ambitions, but the process of manually curating data to actually get there took us down roads we didn't expect. And here we are years later, only just scratching the surface.
I'm going to just stop sharing as we bring our presentation to an end. Although dance scholars may view digital methods with suspicion for reducing the texture of lived experience to data, rigorous data sets can retain the kind of ontological complexity sometimes occluded in a more conventional historical account that favors discrete, easily narratable, but exceptional anecdotes. The granular perspective we use in our intersectional everyday analytic, which stems from building data sets that account for Dunham's itinerary every single day, offers a counter narrative to such accounts. And here we're thinking in a digital sense with Derek Miller's argument that we need to be looking across all of what he calls average Broadway rather than just the blockbuster hits, as well as with Judith Hamera's commitment to thinking through a broader spectrum of dance history, including middle brow performance. In their digital humanities essay against cleaning, Katie Rawson and Trevor Munoz advocate for data sets as opportunities for deeper research into the meaningful messiness of distinguishing features, overlaps, and similarities. In developing models and tools by which the field of dance history can make use of digital methods, our research raises some core questions that we've been considering specifically in relation to Katherine Dunham, but which are broader questions for the field. How can we understand dance history in relation to patterns of travel, or in other words, how dancers move through the world? What constitutes a movement community? And how does extensive travel inform the movement vocabulary such a community shares? As performers join and leave the Dunham Company, how do they bring movement knowledge into that community? How does that knowledge impact Dunham's repertory? How does that repertory itself cut across people and places? And how do the shifts in scale that such questions demand challenge our scholarly affinities for units of analysis such as the tour, the company, and the work?
In 2010, Glenn Worthy wrote a white paper for the Dance Heritage Coalition in which he posited, and I love this quote, "I believe public opinion to the contrary, that it's generally easier to teach a little bit of programming to an interested dance historian than to train a programmer in the subtleties and depths of dance history." A decade later, we're still just starting to figure out what it might mean to take up this invitation. We see our methodology of visceral data analysis in conversation with creative computational practices coming out of dance tech. So De La Fuente, Watley, Raiko, Nakarato, as well as digital analytic models from theater history, Bolin, Balm, Escobar, Varela, Miller, Gonzalez. Visceral data analysis is particularly well suited to critical questions that arise from the circulation and diffusion of artists' practices and ideas across broad geographic or temporal ranges. However, expanding Worthy's proposition, we contend that it's not about programming alone, but about bringing dance historical questions into the discussions about data and lived experience that are occurring in the fields of spatial history, geohumanities, feminist science and technology studies, and other experimental arts and humanities, to develop new means of negotiating bodily complexity in relation to data. While we have so much to learn from all of these fields, there's also so much that dance can do as an interlocutor, once we're better able to grapple with the problems that make data-driven work meaningful for performing arts research in the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. This was fascinating. Wow, congratulations. My mind is reeling. It's just extraordinary, the questions that you raise. But I see that we already have a few questions emerging. So I'll move right on to those. Halifu Osimara writes, thank you for the excellent presentation. Have you explored why Katherine Dunham's company was not funded or US sponsored as other companies of her caliber? Can visceral data analysis demonstrate the whys of issues like this in dance touring? There's a question for you.
Harmony, do you want to go that one?
Sure, I can take this one. So there has been a kind of ongoing suggestion that the reason Dunham is not provided with state sponsorship or funding has to do with the performance of Southland. That has been kind of an accepted narrative. And I think that Dunham was definitely pushing on some pushing people out of their comfort zones for sure. We have not actually been able to trace a connection between the performance of Southland and absence of funding. This is not an avenue that we have explored deeply because although we're interested in Dunham's pursuit of solvency because it's not coming from the government, we're finding where it is coming from. But one of the things that comes up repeatedly is a question about where mail, like what happens to mail when you send it and you keep traveling. And so there are a few times we see in the archives, for example, there's a kind of tragic episode where Doris Duke has offered quite a large sum to maintain the Dunham School, and it goes astray because Dunham is touring and the procedures are not followed through by the people in the front office, basically. So there are kind of mishaps and misfires that we see along the way, all sorts of mail and telegrams and things that don't arrive at their intended destination. And so even though the narrative that we've kind of come across most frequently is attributing Dunham's non-funding to her performance of Southland, we have not been able to locate any specific evidence of that in our archival research.
Mm.
And in fact, I would just add to that it seems that the touring patterns are happening before that moment and they are continuing afterwards. So I think that is the one thing we are seeing, is that there's a lot to look at in terms of how Dunham is working and keeping working, but it doesn't seem to radically change at that moment. What we do also see, though, is, for example, when she's trying to organize a trip to Japan much later, one of the producers tells her, oh, well, we expect American performers to have US State Department funding, and therefore we don't care if they don't care if they fill seats. but you're going to need to fill seats, so this might be a problem for us. So we're seeing very clearly that her not having the funding is a problem,
It matters.
but we're not seeing that as a threshold moment.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, isn't DDoS right about diasporic, the so-called ambassador of diaspora as a kind of a substitute for national identity, as the ambassador of the US, so to speak, you know, because that's an idea area, but it's an important one in her world, right? I have a question, I'm sorry. I have a question from Ketrak. Thanks for a fascinating presentation. I wanted to ask about the repertory that you noted, and to elaborate the connection between repertory and archive in your project as analyzed by Diana Taylor, repertory archive. Does the finding, or do the findings in archives at times hinder the larger takeaway in dance history? Does this method require special training in creating data charts, as you both shown us? Thanks again, Ketu.
So I think in a way, yes and no. I think we've been thinking a lot about the relationship between repertory and repertoire, and maybe how those get held together. But I think as you're saying, this archival work, I think what Harmony are really interested so often when we hit technologically influenced studies of performance and dance, and specifically there's so much of an influence on mocap, on visual materials. There's so much that's about what can we see and what do we do with what we can see. And so in this project, we're really interested in how can you get at movement and so many of these questions that matter to us as dance, maybe not by means of the visual first. And I would say in that way, building the data sets of repertory out of programs and out of show patter and so on, it indexes a very specific relationship between them. And I think that's been one of the really interesting things, is where those relationships kind of are both connected to the lineage that's been passed down through studio practice, and where they also diverge. And it feels like both of these feel important. Harmony, do you want to take the second half?
So the second half of the question is whether or not this method requires special training in creating data charts, as we showed. I will say that, Kate and I did not come in with special training in creating spreadsheets. And in fact, it has been a long process of self-education as we try to determine, okay, so this is how digital work more or less gets done. What's relevant in a dance context? Because not everything is when techniques have been developed for the analysis of literature, for example, those techniques don't necessarily draw out what feels important in dance, or specifically in dance touring. So we basically kind of created trouble, did our own troubleshooting, did our own kind of revision process over many years. We mentioned that Kate and I have been collaborating since 2013. So we've kind of been training ourselves to think in this way, and also to look for the kinds of information that responds to this type of analysis. And that's also why we're kind of deep in the archive as compared to in the repertoire, which is kind of the next step, that studio-based transmission and that oral history that kind of composes how Diana Taylor is thinking of repertoire as distinct from archive. So I would say that it doesn't require special training, although we have also been encouraged to think about how we might develop workshops specifically to help people adapt and develop this type of methodology for their own work.
Thank you. I have a question for Phoenix Ding. You've talked about nested relationship of Dunham's pieces, containers, and programs. So what does containers mean exactly? How this nested relationship, the inter-influence, intertext nature of Dunham's pieces change how we understand Dunham technique today? kind of repertoire technique question.
So containers are funny, right? Because containers are in some ways a placeholder. We kind of all have an idea of a piece. We sort of understand what a dance is. We get what an evening length show is, but the container is kind of this placeholder language. And for us, the container tends to be about act length. And what happens is that these act length containers are often named, and they have particular pieces that accrue to them. Not only those, but as we use it, we had the example of Brazilian suite, where normally there will be 4 to 6 pieces anytime that are included anytime that Brazilian suite is a container, but actually there are, I think, 20 total pieces coming in and out of it. And so containers are these loose structures. Harmony,
we could think about it as like theme and variation also, you know, it's kind of an overarching entity that holds things together, but what it's holding together changes over time.
But it also seems, do you want to do rituals and rite? Because I think that might be helpful.
I do. So this is one of the biggest arguments that Kate and I have ever had in doing this work, because what happened was under the name of rituals, Katherine Dunham presented, I believe it was fertility ritual and puberty ritual alongside Shango, and I think there was a 4th piece. And instead of calling it Rite Passage, she called it rituals. And so then we were thrown into a crisis, because Rite Passage is this canonical work. Do we, you know, break it open and say now Shango is part of this canonical work, which, you know, like that threw me into a huge crisis? Or do we, you know, do the reverse, where we say that not only do fertility ritual and puberty ritual belong to Rite Passage, they also belong to rituals. In other words, it kind of introduced a category crisis and a canon crisis, which is, you know, also one of the great and interesting things about working with Dunham's material, is that she's constantly asking us to confront some of those norms or standards or shortcuts that we make as dance scholars and historians. And it's fruitful, and also like, but how do we make sense of this? It flies in the face of what I think I know.
Yeah.
And also, I would say our postdoc Tia Monique Uzer, when she first joined us, so when Tia Monique joined us, we had done a first iteration of the repertory data set. And one of the first things we gave her to do was double check us. So we said, basically, start again. Here's the structure we built, but start again with the archives and see if you can rebuild it. And then we're going to compare what we each come to, because in a way, the repertory is so complicated. And as she began working in there, at the time, we didn't separate out shows from evening length shows from act length containers. And Tia Monique started trying to work through the archives again. And she's like, nope, there's something completely different. The named show, because Dunham's doing performances all the time that are Katherine Dunham and her dancers, drummers, and singers. But the named show, Caribbean Rhapsody, and these others, Tia Monique ended up really making a case to us that these are categorically different than the act length container, and that we needed to redo the hierarchy to set that up.
Of course, the named show also is known to be in the review format. So that both corresponds to the container, and also the container complexifies the notion of the review format. Because a review format would be, by definition, right, a series of pieces that start to evolve thematically, but are separate, yet not as separate as works. And in some way, it relativizes the notion of the work. So I think that's really an interesting thing coming out of this, to my mind.
Yeah. Yep.
I have a question from Susan Jones. Do you think this methodology might help shed light on the shifts in personal identities that occur through dance touring patterns, the possibilities of disaffiliation from whatever might constitute home, quote unquote, through the experience of touring, and the problems of the return, the kind of ontological issue that travel narratives have conventionally raised?
Kate, you're the expert on exile. I think this one's for you.
So I'll answer this first from the data, which is when we use this euphemism that our supplementary personnel data keeps track of affinities to place. And that we're looking at a few things there. So sometimes we have information about dancers' places of birth. We very often, because they're crossing national boundaries quite a lot, passports are super important, but as we mentioned, passports are very complicated because passport nationality is very often, particularly in the mid-century, quite different from the places that you might carry cultural knowledge from, even though you also will circulate through those places. And then initially, we were also trying to say, where did dancers join from when they joined the company, and where did they return to? And then we had the problem that performers are constantly coming in and out of working with Dunham. And so there wasn't going to be one place anyone was going to. And so I think that has been really, I think, a challenge for us all together. And then thinking about how can we use that to index some information about what they might bring into the company without it being deterministic in a very particular way. And also, I think there are how these travels, again, why we wanted where people were going to was because the ramifications of this, the ripple effects, right? The ripple effects don't stop in 1960, right? It's this person went here who then taught another generation. If we use Halifu as an example, talking about encountering Dunham technique in Sweden, right? In all the company members who stayed there teaching, there are these ripple effects that go from place to place to place. And so I feel like that's the thing that we hold space for, at the same time as that's work that has to happen with other folks continuing to pick up and do this for other artists and so on. We could do these same traces through every single one of those 189 performers, but then that requires other data sets and a lot of time and a lot of really good archives.
And I would add, one of the questions that has been interesting to us is a question of influence, and how does this kind of work lend itself to having a broader understanding of influence as kind of unfolding on a global scale. And we could also, kind of loop in other touring artists to develop that narrative further. Your question about disaffiliation, I think, is really interesting. One of the things that has been interesting for us is thinking about how instead of a company per se, the Dunham's dancers, drummers, and singers become themselves a kind of autonomous cultural entity and enterprise as they are touring. And they aren't really doing it in the name of nationalism. I mean, there's one moment where they tour the army bases, but other than that, there's not really kind of like waving the flag of the US that is inspiring their movement. So I think that disaffiliation is an important thread that we are not quite pulling on. We also do see that Dunham makes explicit on more than one occasion that she doesn't want to come back to the US because of racism. And so she's like, we're just gonna chill out here in Europe for a while longer because it's doing something different for us. And so in that way, that disaffiliation does appear. And I would just also finally add that we didn't actually state it in this presentation, but it's really important for us that no thing stands on its own. The visualizations are tied to the data sets, and both are tied to our articles. And it's important that the interpretation always remains connected to the visualization, so that we're not giving a misimpression that the data speak for themselves. That said, we do try to leave enough traces in our notes where those things come up in the archives. Yeah.
I want to jump to a question that seems to segue from what you just said of Yatonde Whitney Hunter. He's a faculty member at Temple. Curiosity around disbanding. you evidence that work continues in many instances when the company is disbanded. So might this identity might this identify a kind of political strategy around the use of disbanding of the company?
It's an interesting provocation to think about a political strategy of disbanding. I think that what we have evidence for is the economics of disbanding, or portioning out. So temporarily disbanding and just taking a small group to do a short string of small usually nightclub performances, as compared to the larger concert performances, which have larger stage, larger casts, et cetera, et cetera.
And I think there's a certain way that Dunham is always in her notes. She talks about needing to strip down to, as Harmony says, a smaller stage, a smaller cast, just simply less money coming in and out from these events. But she can't take the company down so small that she can't get them back again. So there's constantly also a very practical negotiation of how to get this group small enough for these various scale venues, but not so small that they can't return to a concert stage easily.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And that's both like a morale thing. She talks about the morale of the performers, as well as it's only with promise of future employment that people are going to stick around. Otherwise, they're going to go back and seek other employment. I think that Dunham kind of officially disbands about 3 times. So there's also this kind of going apart and coming back together that we see in the time period that we're exploring as well. That is in response to, in one case, for sure, in response to physical injury, like she literally just can't continue on.
Which also speaks to the fictionality of the tour, since you evoked fictionality of the company, the repertoire, and the tour. But the idea of a tour as a closed entity, something that has a beginning, middle, and end, that's projected, versus the idea that one could be stranded in the middle of a tour, but then actually also return.
Right.
Amazing concept. And then also the other things one could do in that moment of being stranded, which is obviously not previsible, right? It's not something that was planned on.
Right.
So,
and it's not just Dunham on her own. So some of her performers who are most actively working, we found a newspaper from Vanoy Aiken's hometown saying, oh, he's back for the first time in 9 years. And he's been working consistently with Dunham this whole time. Right. So seeing this tour not starting and stopping is not just Dunham keeps going and the performers are all dropping out.
Well, I have a question from Catherine Mazur. You embody this data more and more each time you present this. No need to oppose data and ethnography with bodies, but capital B-U-T. I still wonder about the touch contact of letters and diaries and tickets, etc., that bring another sense of choreography and kinesthetic to the research that I try to incorporate into my writing. I sense this in the way you worked with traveling, but any comments on the loss or gain from materials to data?
I have lots of comments. One is it's a translation, right? So you lose something and you gain something in any moment of translation. So as you're translating archival and artifacts into data points, you certainly are losing something, but you can't keep that something and do this other thing, right? So what is gained is the ability to do this kind of work. But in terms of it incorporating that fleshiness, that kinesthesia, the sense of the choreographic into prose, I think that that's a kind of ongoing question and concern in the writing. And this is an ongoing question and concern that's something that is really exciting for us to explore in the visualizations themselves. So most of the visualizations are not none of them are out of the box. We've worked very closely with our data scientists to try to articulate or try to develop ways for the data to be lively, to have lively data. And we're thinking further in the future in terms of like, what would actually be a choreographic syntax for data visualization? In other words, how can we utilize not just movement in an abstract sense, but a kind of choreographic logic, a compositional logic for developing visualizations that represent dance better in that particular compositional way as compared to, for example, the network visualization. It's a force directed, it's a physics engine. So it moves, but it doesn't have a it's not attached to a dance-based logic. So that would be kind of a next step of our inquiry.
Mm. I see one of the questions from Cristina Fernandez Rosa. Thank you so much for this rich and innovative presentation. I was wondering how perhaps in the future, the data might be able to transpire or account for not only where Dunham's company traveled to, but also how they moved, e.g. the racist interactions informing her tours and overall mobility of her company across the globe. For instance, regarding venues they were allowed to perform, nightclubs versus theaters, and or lodge, especially in former European colonies.
So this is, I think part of my answer is, there's two parts. So one is that I think something we've really been thinking about a lot is that it's not only the data itself, but it's the act of building the data. And this is the essay that Harmony I published last year in Theater Survey is really talking about this granular process of trying to figure out where Dunham is every day, day by day, when we have all these conflicting archival documents, but also how that simple promise of trying to answer this simple question, where is she on Tuesday, November 12th of this year, right? How that problem basically brings us back into the archives in a different way. And so on the one hand, I think it's not necessarily that the data itself accounts for it, but also that the practice of trying to order anything into a data set demands a certain type of granularity, a certain type of perspective that lets us see a whole host of these things that you're bringing up differently. I would also say, and this is where the cutting room floor happens, when Antonio first started working with us, we spent about 5 or 6 months attempting to model like where Dunham should go, where she would have gone, like basically
based
to
on
do
her
more
patterns.
machine learning kind of things based on her past patterns and figure out where she should be going. And somehow she was never going the places we wanted her to go or thought she should go, or, and in a way we walked away from that. That felt like that wasn't as helpful to us in terms of the questions we cared about and were asking. But I think there is always that possibility. And I think the closest we get to that now is where we look at things like populations and how much time she's spending in places. What are the locations which have very small populations, but she's spending a long period of time. So we can begin to think about how is she sustaining herself and maybe how is that different? How does that draw attention to locations we might not expect?
In a sense, this work is creating another archive to examine too, right?
Well, and that connects to Valerie Rashawn just asked. I think there's two things. I think it brings us into the archive differently. Like I think personally, I never thought a receipt would be so interesting. Right. I think there's really,
I never intended to do archival work ever.
But every single postcard, there's the photo on the front of the postcard that has one location, there's a location written on it, and then there's a postmark, and very often those will be 3 different things. So you suddenly have a chronology, so I think that this work, asks us to look at archives in a particular way, but I think then Valerie was also asking, what are we doing with these data sets? And so these data sets.
I didn't read it, but she says, do you have the names of the performers from the various countries? The graph you displayed of the company members from different countries seems to be of great interest. I'm sorry, just wanted to share that with everyone. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Didn't interrupt you.
So the data sets are for this project were acquired by the National Archive for Data on Arts and Culture, and they're going to be releasing them open access, though there is somewhat of a caveat here, which is we are going to release the itinerary data set, we're going to release the personnel check-ins, and we'll release the repertory. I think our choice has been to hold on to the personnel attribute data set. Like, we're happy to talk with researchers, but in a way that's a lot of private information to simply release open access. Even though all of this material is coming from publicly available archives, we're very conscious of what information we hold on to about people. And so that's one that will be restricted instead of open access like the three main, the people, the places, and the pieces.
Great. I have one, I'm not sure it's a question as much as a comment from Sandy Kurtz. Your tracking of performances through cabaret and nightclub venues is really valuable stuff, both for our understanding of Dunham and for those of us trying to understand the broad connections of a dance community that includes amateur and professional performer and audience, concert and social dance, etc. It's not really a question, but it's a comment I thought you might want to take up. And so, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. The realization of just how much work takes place in these non-concert venues was really interesting for us to think about and explore. I think we kind of segment information still in dance studies, and so I think as a field, you know, we haven't kind of held ourselves accountable to Hollywood, for example. You know, like, how are people actually going between stages, from the concert stage to the Broadway stage, for example, and how do we allow that? How do we admit that as part of what dancers do, what choreographers do? And we've kind of had a kind of narrow vision, a narrow field of vision on what has been kind of cordoned off as the, you know, artwork that is happening. And so I'm really excited about some of the questions that can open up, and Dunham really demands it. Like, she's working really across forms and also across modalities, right? Like, she's writing her anthropological work, she's writing her own kind of memoirs and autobiographic work. And so she's the content that her essays, the content that she produces is not just in this narrow field, but is really kind of across many arenas simultaneously. And that's also something that we wanted. We wanted to do so many things. That was also something that we had initially wanted to track over time, but then the touring just kept us too busy. But thinking about, as you're saying, those connections between the amateur and the professional, the performer and the audience, and really thinking about what kinds of audiencing is happening and how are artists actively engaged in curating their audiences. Across, you know, from the silver screen to the concert stage.
Thank you. I think that kind of wraps up the questions right now. I want to thank you both for extraordinarily stimulating presentation, and so happy we recuperated because we had planned it earlier. And I'm so delighted that you're here now, and this is so enriching and so brilliant. So thank you very much. And I know there'll be more. I'm sure there'll be more. I see, you know, as we end, there are always like more comments suddenly popping up. I think though that we'll draw it to a close now, unless you want to add anything more at this point.
No, thanks so much for being here. I guess we are very shortly, we are in the process of putting up all of our visualizations, all of our essays online. We're getting a portfolio there. And one of the goals of that portfolio is connecting up the essays, the visualizations, and so the data sets. As Harmony says, this is a critical mixed methods project. And so trying to leave traces that help people to hold those pieces together. So please visit it, let us know your thoughts, and reach out.
Wonderful. We'll be forwarding to you the record of the chats and the questions, so you'll have and also of who is present, so we can continue to talk.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. Mark and Lori, thank you for your support and invitation. And it was such a pleasure to be here with you today.
Absolutely. Thank you both. More soon.